Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Second Chance Live show. Let me know where you're tuning in from if you're hopping on. And here's what I'm excited about today. I'm excited that you're here, that the pandemic didn't destroy you, that it hasn't taken your life, it hasn't robbed you of your joy, that you at least have enough in you at this current moment to be watching this video. Like, go ahead, just reach your right hand up and pat yourself on the back because you deserve it. Not saying things are perfect, not saying life is peachy keen, just saying, I know one thing about you, that you are better today than you were on your worst day, right? Like, amen in the chat. None of us are living in our worst day today. So I'm excited for you for that reason. And I'm also excited because we have a very special guest, Terri Britt, that will be with us today. And she's going to be sharing about raising your worthiness quotient. Wow. I remember when her and I had this discussion, I was just fascinated by this concept and her expertise around this area because it's something that I see so many people struggle with, right? Like, have you ever felt unworthy? Have you ever felt like an imposter? Have you ever heard someone who is like obviously brilliant, but yet they don't recognize it? They don't feel they deserve love and attention or a platform. We're going to talk about all that today. And so I'm very excited to chat with that. So you guys know the drill. If you've been following me any length of time, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop yapping after I read this bio. And as I'm reading this bio, here's what I want you to think of. I want you to think about, who do you know that needs to hear about raising their worthiness quotient? Who do you know that could benefit from this wonderful woman that I'm getting ready to dive into her expertise and her story? And then I want you to invite them to join you. You can host a watch party, you can click share, or you can just copy the link and send it to them. But whatever you do, do not hold this information to yourself. When we share this with others, this is how we all rise together. So, former Miss USA, Terri Britt, is a spiritual coach and energetic healer, inspirational speaker, and founder of the Women Leaders of Love global community, as well as the creator of the transformational series, The Worthiness Quotient. Claim your crown. Lead a life you love. Terri is the author of the award-winning book, The Enlightened Mom, a mother's guide for bringing peace, love, and light to your family's life. Oh, such a good copywriting. I love it. As well as her journal awakening message sent in her newest ebook, which you guys have to get, Women Leaders of Love. Oh, I love how that sounds. Just let that marinate for a second. Terri has been seen and heard on shows such as Today, Good Day, Atlanta. Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's so awesome. NBC and Y. And for over 20 years, she's coached people from all walks of life, including television executives, entrepreneurs, parents, teens, kids. Her mission is to help people end, emotional crisis, end emotional chaos, stress, and struggle. Wow. You need to be like mainstream television right now because there's a lot of the world that's dealing with emotional chaos and struggle. And your mission is to end that. Let's talk about that and raise their worthiness quotients to inner and outer abundance. To learn more, you can go to www.terribritt.com and we'll put that on the screen as well throughout the show so you can connect with her. All right. That's the official. Let me give you the Daryl. The Daryl is this. We were on a call with our good friends, Chris and Jen, who has an amazing organization, Super Connector, help you with media visibility. And she was beaming like she is now. And you always can tell in these circles, like, that person I need to connect with. And then I believe I heard her mention she was former Miss USA and was interested in some stuff that I felt I could help with. And we connected. And then it was one of those things where I think we had like a 15, 20-minute phone call scheduled, and we talked for like 45 minutes. And it was that synergy. And what I love about you, Terri, is your heart to serve others, and it's hard to find a good balance between humility and confidence. I see a lot of people who, when they try to be humble, they lose that confidence.
Mm.
And you had a good merger of both.
Oh, thank
And that
you.
was amazing for me to see, and it inspired me. And so that's why I want to share my platform with you today. So I would love to dive right in for our audience who's been waiting patiently for me to stop talking. I always say that, but they're like, no more, Daryl. But this is about you today, and this is about the audience who's listening in. Raising your worthiness quotient. Like, what do you mean when you say that, and how can one go about doing that?
Well, thank you first off for that. I like your introduction way better than the written one. Thank you so much for that. And I love that you're combining the humility and the confidence, because my confidence comes from allowing God to work through me. And and just being open to receive. And that's really what the worthiness quotient is all about. Your worthiness quotient is how open you are to receiving love, nurturing, support, guidance from God and the universe, simply for who you were created to be. In our society, from childhood, we are trained to perform. You have to act this way. You have to do it this way. You have to achieve a certain amount of status before you can receive life's rewards. And I lived on that hamster wheel because I was always trying to prove my worth. And what I found is that I was an emotional mess. I was always angry. I always felt in doubt and questioning myself. Am I doing it right? Am I going to get it right? I mean, have you ever felt that way where you just felt like, oh my gosh, what is the right path? What is the right thing to do? And because you're always in that state of doubt, then you're shut down. You're in a state of contraction. Think of yourself as being in a fetal position, right? And so if you're shut down, God's abundance is everywhere. It is there for us, but we have to be open to receive it. And most of us are not open to receive. We'll say, oh yeah, I'm worthy. But then we question, why does life feel hard? Why does life feel like punishment? Why do I feel like I'm in such a state of emotional stress and struggle and chaos? It's because we are not open to receive this abundance. And so my mission is to help people see you are worthy. No one determines your worthiness. You determine your worthiness by how much you love and nurture yourself, so that you stay in an open and receptive state to receive the abundance that is there for all of us.
Wow. I mean, masterclass already.
It's pretty profound, but it's so simple when you look at it. I mean, it is really simple. We are not open to receive. If you watch our parents, I mean, you're a parent, right? And I'm actually in Florida being a nana right now to my grandbaby, and she just happened to be taken away by my other daughter. My one daughter's on vacation, and my other daughter's here local and had a few hours. And I said, "Can you take her while I'm going on this show?" And so what I watched as a mother, and I did this myself, and this is when I decided to shift my life because I didn't like who I was. We as parents, we project our pain onto our children. So if we feel any kind of lack inside, then we're telling our kids, well, you need to be this way. You need to do it that way. You need to be the best. You need to work really, really hard so that you can have success. And as parents, we want the best for our children, right? We want that for them. We want them to feel more joy and abundance than what we felt. I mean, can you relate to that? Have you ever felt that way?
Of course.
Yeah, we want that, right? So what we do is we end up denying ourselves so that we can do everything for our kids. We work ourselves into the ground. We put ourselves on the back burner. And what we're actually exemplifying to our children is a lack of abundance, a lack of worthiness. What we're showing them is that we're not worthy of receiving. You may be as a child, but when you grow up, it all goes away. I remember working with this woman. She had been a huge television executive, and then she ended up leaving everything. Her husband still was. They were both television executives, but she left everything to become a mom. This was years ago. She was an emotional mess. She said, what is wrong with me? I mean, here she was, this dynamic, powerful businesswoman, but as soon as she became a mother, she went into lack. She went into self-denial. She was an emotional mess. She was trying to make her kids be perfect, and she
Mm.
realized that she was perpetuating the cycle. So it's like no matter what she was as an adult, but as soon as she became that parent, she went into what she knew as a child, watching her own parents, her own mother.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
now she was perpetuating that cycle of lack, of self-denial, of stress and struggle, instead of following her heart and who she was created to be. As soon as she became a mom, all of that went out the window.
Mm.
So this is what we do as parents. And for me, I could see it. I knew that I was emotional mess. I would be all happy-go-lucky, and then all of a sudden I'd get triggered. You know how when your kid or even your spouse does something and every hair on your neck stands up?
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, how many of us can relate to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I would do that, and I did it so often that I found myself being buried in guilt. And I just knew that I was perpetuating a cycle for my
Mm.
children. And I had watched my parents do this. So I said, no more. I don't want to do this anymore. And that's when I ended up starting to learn about energy and meditating and going into the subconscious mind to look at what beliefs were I holding, was I holding on to that were causing me to react
Mm.
and to be in this state of control and pushing. And what I realized is they were beliefs that told me who I was not enough,
Mm.
right? They were
Mm.
beliefs that said you have to be something other than who you are to receive
Mm.
life's rewards. And I
Mm.
was projecting those beliefs onto my kids.
Mm. Wow. And how did you rewire?
So what I did, this was the coolest thing. So when I was in energy school, we started learning about everything is energy. Science now tells us that everything is energy. And that 95% of your mind is run by your subconscious mind. Your life is run by your subconscious mind. And that's where all these beliefs are. So when I was learning about energy, we would be looking at someone's energy and helping them shift and helping them move into a state of a joy and trust, just, more into alignment. But if you got triggered, if you had what we called a matching picture, that was your cue to go within and look at your own energy. Well, every time I would get stuck looking at someone and I would go within and look at myself,
Mm. What's a matching picture?
a matching picture means like, how when you bond with somebody, like in sports, you're bonding because your buddies play sports. That's a matching picture. If you both were beaten up as children, as abused,
Okay.
and you draw that
Okay.
to your life, that's a matching picture.
Okay.
It could be, I like pink lipstick, and so do you. That's a
Yeah.
matching picture. Okay, it could be anything. But the tendency is that a matching picture in your subconscious mind is something that is painful. It's a memory or a belief that you've taken on that is causing you to feel unworthy.
Mm.
So every time I would go within and look at myself and say, okay, what's causing me to be triggered? And I would recognize, oh, wait, this is a belief that I'm holding on to. This is a belief maybe that I don't deserve to be heard. This is a
Mhm.
belief that says that I'm not enough. And it could have been just a picture about, oh, well, one time a girl was mean to me at school. It could be
Yeah.
something as simple as that, right?
Yeah.
Well, what was the belief I took on in that moment?
Mhm.
Right? So as soon as I would clear out the beliefs and then say, what is my truth? Who am I? How was I created? And then give myself permission to stand in that truth. All of a sudden, the emotional angst
Mhm.
that I had been feeling, because your emotional angst is simply you being out of alignment with the way God created you,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
We're in our emotional angst is because we are not honoring and loving the way we were created. We're not trusting that we're enough,
Mm.
right? So when
Yeah.
we clean out these beliefs and give ourselves permission to stand in our truths, then
Mhm.
we now open up to receive. And the way I was shown, Daryl, it was really interesting because I was meditating one day on unconditional love.
Mm.
I'd read a book on unconditional love. It was called Love Without Conditions by Paul Ferrini.
Mm.
I'm sitting there and I finished reading the book and I decided I'm going to meditate on this. So I'm meditating. And all of a sudden, the little 5-year-old girl inside of me shows up, little Terri. I had never seen her, acknowledged her, or loved
Mhm.
her. And I am sobbing because I realize that my whole life I have been pushing her into the corner.
Mhm.
Okay. then I hear in my ear my voice, but it is clear as day. And I know I'm being spoken to, and I hear, get up and write this. This is the beginning of your book. And that was the beginning of my book, Message Sent, which was really a journal of awakening. But what I did is in that book is I started paying attention to my outer world, especially my children, my spouse, my friends. At that time, I was not working. So work would have been also in the picture, but I was not working at that time. But I started looking at how am I reacting to my outer world? Just like you asked, so what did you start doing? I started paying attention and saying that if I am reacting just like in that old energy school, there's something inside of me that is being triggered. I would take that as my cue instead of staying in blame with my husband or my kids and saying, you guys are making me crazy. How many times have we all done that, right? You're making me nuts. Is I would use it and see it as a gift. So instead of being in this victim mentality, I went into a state of gratitude saying, thank you, God.
That's good.
This really, really is driving me crazy, but I know you're showing me something about myself. And then I would take it as a cue to go within and talk to that little girl inside of me and ask her, what's hurting? What's causing you to react? What's causing you to lash out at your kids? What's causing your emotional angst? And so my children and the people around me became these amazing gifts to take me into alignment with the way I was created, to really help me start putting God first. We're often taught that putting God first is putting yourself last. And I see, yet our divorce rate is like 50% in this country. And so what I learned very quickly is that putting God first is me going deep within and asking for the guidance, and then putting that first over my ego. Okay, putting that first over me trying to win my husband's love, my kids' love. I can tell you when my husband died, when I was going through all of this, we'd been married 17 years, and my husband now of almost 13 years showed up on my doorstep and said, let me support you through this. My kids, of course, were like blown away when 3 months later we started dating. I mean, it was just happening like this. And when we made a decision to get married a year later, they're looking at me going, what are you doing? And the tendency is to say, I'm going to stop my life just to make sure you're happy. The reality of it is a child is going to have to go through their process, and they need to see their parents being healthy and going through their own process. So I had to say to my kids, I love you, but God comes first in my life. And I would never intentionally hurt you. And I have to follow what I know to be true. And what's so cool now is 13 years later, my kids will tell you it was the best thing I ever did, was following my heart and following the guidance that I was given to marry Charlie. We have an amazing marriage. My kids, they have incredible relationships with the men in their life. My daughter with her husband, and my other daughter with her boyfriend. They have healthy, dynamic relationships. And I know it's because I set that tone for them. So that's what it means, is to raise your worthiness quotient, is you are using everything as an opportunity to go within and say, am I standing in my truth? Am I honoring and loving the way I was created? And then as you become that, what I call the divine parent to that little kid inside of you, you're treating yourself as if you're worthy of being seen and heard and valued, because you're parenting yourself the way you always wanted to be loved. And in that state of connectedness, you now feel worthy. So you open up to receive God's unlimited abundance. And I could tell you miracle story after miracle story that has shown up in my life from doing this. And yeah, it's crazy. That's the long explanation of it, but that gives you the whole picture of how I went, because I had a lot of anger, and I went from emotional chaos to really living in a state of peace, which is incredible to say that I can say that now.
Was this pre or post Miss USA?
This is post Miss USA. So prior to Miss USA, I was living on that hamster wheel. I was trying to win every accolade I could. I was angry all of the time. I actually tried to beat up my boyfriend just a few months prior to winning Miss USA. I put my fist in his kitchen window.
Feisty, man.
And it was, I mean, if they'd known that, they might not have chosen me as Miss USA. But he just wasn't loving me the way I wanted to be loved. It was like I wanted everybody to love me because I felt so unloved. And I'll be, really honest with you here. A few years prior to that, I had been molested, and by a modeling agent. When I look back on it, I can see how I pulled away from school. I mean, I had been involved in everything in school. And those last few years of high school, I really started pulling away, just getting angrier and angrier and angrier, because I'd always felt like I needed to be good to be loved. I lived by the good girl rules, which that was bad enough. But then to get molested on top of it was harrowing. And so for me, I was attached to my boyfriend to get that love. I wanted him to love me. And when he wasn't loving me and filling me up, that's when I would go crazy. So this is what happened, though, which was kind of interesting. In my second semester of my sophomore year of college, I'd gone to school on scholarship. I mean, I was at, the epitome of the, good student. I was at home for the weekend, and I was talking to a friend on the phone. I told him how much I hated school because this was how dysfunctional I was. I followed my boyfriend to a school that did not have a broadcasting department, and yet that was my dream, was to be a newscaster. That's how dysfunctional I was. I believed I had to give myself up to receive love, and it meant even my dreams that I had to give up. So I was miserable in school. I was miserable in the relationship. I mean, everything was miserable. I was always crying. So I was at home for the weekend, and I was talking to a friend on the phone. I told him how much I hated school, and he said, "So don't go." And I said, "Well, I have to." And he said, "Says who?" And Daryl, I don't know how to explain it other than just something washed over me. And I said, "You're right." Says who? I went into my mom and dad, and I said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't go back to school." As soon as I made that decision, and they said, "Fine," my apartment rented because I had some roommates, but my room rented without any effort. I got a job. I mean, everything was flowing because I was treating myself as if I mattered. I was putting myself in a high worthiness quotient. Right after that, I was selling shoes at Dillard's department store, and a former Miss Arkansas came in, encouraged me to be in the pageant. My mom made my dress. I went into Miss Arkansas. I had very, very short hair. I mean, not your typical Miss USA. I've got more Miss USA hair now, but back then it was here, and it was mousy brown. I won Miss Arkansas. 2 weeks later, I get sent to Miss USA. No training, no nothing. I get there. I think the pageant's rigged because I see some of these girls getting pulled out of rehearsals to go be on camera. And nobody's explained to us that that's what these states have followings, like Miss Texas, Miss New York, Miss Hawaii, Miss California. They have these huge followings. So if their press shows up, of course they're going to let them leave. Nobody told us this. So I'm in the dance routine practicing. I'm on the front line. I'm thinking, well, maybe this will be my 15 minutes of fame, of maybe I'll make some kind of connection. Miss Texas has never been in rehearsals. As soon as she comes into rehearsal, they move me to the back and put her in my spot. I had been her placeholder. So I'm now convinced the pageant is rigged. And my anger comes out again. And I am throwing a hissy fit to the point where the head chaperone had to pull me into the ladies' bathroom and explain everything. So, I mean, you're getting a behind the scenes picture here, okay?
I'm listening, yeah.
So I mean, that's how unworthy I felt. But what was so weird, I think because I was not attached to winning, I was just attached to getting a break. That when I made it to top 12 and Bob Barker said, "What do you do in Cabot, Arkansas on a Saturday night? Population 4,000. I said in my very Southern drawl, "Well, Bob, in the winter we stay at home, but in the summer we go to Tasty Freeze. We sit in the back of my friend's truck. He plays the banjo. The guys drink a little beer and dip a little skull. It's a real good time." And I won. So here's what was so cool about that, because that night our seed was planted. It said, when you follow your heart, which meant I left school, and you stand in your truth. I talked about drinking beer and dipping skull, and I wasn't performing for anyone. Miracles show up.
Wow. That's powerful.
It's powerful, but it took a long time for that seed to germinate. Okay. I mean, it took years because I went into the television industry, what's now the E channel. I used to be the news anchor. It was called Movie Time. So I felt again that I was always coming up short. I'd go out for another audition to get a bigger gig, and it'd be down between me and one person, and then they would get it. So it was the sense of, I just have to keep proving. I have to keep proving. I have to keep proving. And then that's when I left everything to become a wife and mom, and realized with my stepson, my late husband's son, who at that time was 5, I was starting to project onto him all the pain that I had inside of me, that you need to be the best. You need to act this way. You need to, be perfect to receive life's rewards. And I couldn't stand myself. And when I had my 2 little girls, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I've got to change. And that's when I made the decision to heal.
Wow. Jeff Davis says, powerful content, Terri. Thank you for sharing your story. And I agree. This is so powerful.
Yeah,
The reason why I asked you that question about was it pre or post Miss USA was because I've noticed this about a lot of former athletes or competitors or high achievers, is that prior to their peak of success, which I hate using that word, but prior to their drivenness journey, it was all motivated by fear or by unworthiness or by lack. And then after they reach the pinnacle and they have some success, then they go through this kind of rebirthing experience that you're describing. And here's the question I want to ask you as a follow-up. Do you think if you would have understood what you understand now, that you would have had the work ethic to be able to achieve the goal of Miss USA?
Well, you have to remember how I won Miss USA. I was selling shoes. A girl talked me into it. And then I went into the pageant, and 2 weeks later left for Miss USA. There was no work ethic that went into it. If anything, I said, I'm surrendering. I'm going to do, and that's why it was so huge for me, because I had always had this driven work ethic that made me crazy. I mean, our society is so built in lack, Daryl. Everybody says, oh, you have to work so hard. That is lack. I'm sorry. I will argue with everybody to this day, because I lived that life, and that's what made me an emotional mess. It is when I started surrendering and finding balance and saying, what is my guidance today? I sit down every morning in meditation and prayer, and I say, God, what is my guidance today? Now, my mind may have a to-do list that is about 15 things long, but when I sit down and I get the guidance, I may get 3 things.
Centered.
Some days I get do nothing, rest. That is a hard one. Because
do nothing. What?
Yeah,
I want to work.
It's so funny. My husband right now is learning all of this. I had him a couple of years ago listen to an audio on prosperity consciousness versus poverty consciousness. Poverty consciousness is when you're working yourself into the ground and you're coming from a space of lack. You're not trusting that you can be nurtured and loved and still have abundance show up without killing yourself, right? So he listens to this audio. We have a coffee company in the mountains of Georgia, and he goes, I'm in poverty consciousness. And I said, why? He said, because I'm going after wholesale business, and I absolutely hate being on the road. I want to be home with you and the dogs. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do? And he goes, I'm stopping. Well, let me tell you, he stopped cold turkey. He quit going after wholesale business, because he knows that loving himself unconditionally is the number one key to worthiness. It is the number one key to opening up to receive God's unlimited abundance. So he knew that if he continued to do what he was doing, he was performing. He was not loving himself unconditionally. So he chose in that moment to love himself unconditionally. And you know what happened? Wholesale business started flooding in. It's because this is the vibration he was holding. He was saying, yes, I'm worthy. I'm standing in my truth. I'm connecting with God. And because this is where he was and he was open to receive, all this abundance started flooding in. And what was so cool about this is this was just a little coffee shop, okay? And right in Helen, Georgia. And you can't do much there. And Charlie's dream had always been to have a destination place. Well, about 2 or 3 months later, this property comes up for sale about a mile from our home, maybe 2 miles because you have to come down a mountain. So maybe a couple of miles. And 7.5 acres, sits at the base of this gorgeous mountain. Already had a building there. It used to be a motorcycle church. I mean, it was just amazing, right? He says, I see this place. I don't even know if I can get it, but this is what's in my heart. He ended up getting the financing he wanted. He ended up getting everything he wanted. We ended up opening up this coffee shop. It's a tasting room, and coffee shops, coffee, wine. We have music on the weekends and everything. It is exploding. I mean, the business is exploding. And what's so interesting is that it explodes that much more every time he remembers to reel himself back and to take downtime and to find balance, to move, because the balance comes from being in a state of unconditional love. Because there you're no longer performing. There you're no longer trying to get it right. You're saying, I am trusting that I'm enough, that I am worthy of God's love and support. And by being in this state, I am saying yes. I am saying yes to me, and I'm saying yes to being in this joyful place. And I can tell you, he's one of the most joyful people I know. And to see him now learning this balance, I mean, he still struggles because he is an entrepreneur full out. Okay. I mean, he is someone who built a cookie dough business in fundraising from $0 to $1 million in a couple of years. I mean, the work ethic, when he was first grade, he's mowing lawns, you know, I mean, this is the work ethic of this man. But to see him shift and really choose unconditional love is amazing. And I'll tell you another little thing. He told me a couple of years ago, he said, I knew you loved me, Terri. He says, but what I realize now is I couldn't receive your love until you taught me to love myself. And now I do. So if you don't love yourself, you're not going to feel worthy. So you're going to shut down. And not only are you not going to receive love from others, but you're also not going to give as much love as you're capable of. Right? We're so programmed in our society that to receive is bad and you need to be in self-denial. But what I learned is that when I withheld love from myself and I was in lack, that's what drove me to be in competition with others. That's what made me feel like, well, you can have it, but I can't. That's what made me angry. That's what made me an emotional mess. But when I loved myself, my heart expanded. And then I had more love to give. That's why my community is called Women Leaders of Love. It's like, women, quit denying yourself thinking this is love. Move into unconditional love and lead your family. Lead them into peace and balance and joy. Lead your communities. Lead your workplaces. Whatever it is, be that. And then that is filtering over to the men. You know, you're doing that. I mean, you're being a leader of love because of the message that you bring out. You're following your heart, right? But a lot of men aren't. They're still in that mindset of you've got to be that warrior mentality. And so we're way out of balance. And what I see is that women, especially since the women's movement, we started attaching ourselves to men's energy. And it's that warrior mentality. When right now,
I'm sorry. You are crushing it right now. I'm like, there's a depth to what you're speaking to that I've gotta pause, not because you're boring us, but because you're dropping bombs right now.
Yeah.
I want you to continue on that thread. This because I don't hear I hear men who have embraced the wellness journey and the slowing down and the stillness side say what you just said about women adopting masculine energy, but I haven't heard many women say it.
Well, let me tell you, think of little girls and they become daddy's girls,
I
right?
have 3, by the way.
So, and I do too, because I have my 2 and then Charlie's daughter. As a little girl, especially a child of the 60s and the 70s, when the women's movement was taking hold, my dad was doing Dale Carnegie courses and doing all of these things. And he would say, you can be anything you want to be. My mother, on the other hand, who was doing the loving mom thing, was suppressing herself, was angry, was not happy. And so as a little girl, I'm like, well, I want to be like daddy. Okay. I want to be like my daddy. So what did that mean is I was going to be successful like daddy. He was out, he had a real estate company, he was being very successful, and I'm going to be like daddy. So everything was about the grades, making the grades in school, being the best in school, being the president of this, the president. I was the overachiever because I wanted to get my daddy's love and approval. Okay. So I became my dad's son.
Oh my gosh, this is good. Keep going.
Okay. I became my dad's son.
Yeah.
Because I did not want to be like my mother.
Wow.
I went so off kilter. And I mean, I was such a jock. And I wasn't even a great jock. I was a good jock. But my mother used to say, swing your hips, you walk like a boy. Because I did. I was like, ugh. I mean, I was going out in the backyard playing football with all the guys in the neighborhood. And they would say, why don't you go out for quarterback on the team? Because I could throw better than half of the guys on the team. And, and so I was just a tough guy, I was tough. And so when I look back on it and I think, gosh, I just attached everything to my dad. What I did is I disconnected from this feminine energy that was inside of me, that we all have. When you look at the yin and yang symbol in yoga, and, it's the male and the female, we all have that. The female is where we go within and we have compassion and kindness and gentleness and nurturing for ourselves. It's where we tap into our intuition and we get connected to God and we get that guidance. And then the divine masculine is when we take action. We take inspired action, which inspired means coming from the soul. It's from spirit, right? And so we've lost that. The women have completely disconnected and gone to the male side, and we look at, why is there so much war? Why is there so much anger and judgment on the planet? Why is there so much separation? It's because there's not a balance of the divine feminine and masculine in each of us. So what I did is, when I started loving myself and I became that divine mother to the little girl inside of me, I started tapping in to that kind, compassionate, and then I would take inspired action. So now there's balance. So there's a balance of the masculine and the feminine. Does that make sense?
Perfectly. Yeah, I mean, you explained that really, really well.
Thank you.
I've had this conversation with several others, and we've toiled around how to word it correctly, right? Because it's a difficult conversation to have, because people are sensitive. And I mean, somebody might have watched him and like, oh, whatever, but if you can knuckle down, and you said it so right. So I'm stealing some of your verbiage in future conversations. So I think it's important. And by the way, the other side flips too. And it's not just, I love the terminology, feminine and masculine energy. And the reason why I love it is because I've seen it where males became their mother's daughter, and they have just the tender and the heart-centered side of things, and it's like, to get them to take inspired action, or for lack of better terms, man up, is like completely like pulling teeth,
right?
And those are rare. And think about how they feel. They feel demasculine, because they're not owning that part of themselves.
And so what you could do to coach them, can I give you some guidance? Right?
Come on, help me coach my clients.
So the way you could coach these guys is to help them recognize that that little boy inside of them is the one who is afraid. Okay. So it's as if the adult male has left the room and the little boy's going, I am too afraid to take action. I just want to be nurtured.
Yep.
If the man will come back into the room as this loving and kind and nurturing divine masculine parent, and imagine scooping up that little boy and saying, we've got this.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this.
Mm.
We can do this together. And then taking inspired action that way.
Yeah.
Now you are coming from a space that is really beautiful, because it's no longer having to dive into that old masculine way that it completely negates the divine feminine, but instead you're coming from this basis of nurturing and connectedness. So now you can move forward and really be in a state of worthiness. But it's no different. It's like what I recognized as a woman, that when I was an emotional mess and wanting someone to love me, it was because I had left the room as the adult, and the little girl inside of me was in the corner going, I'm all alone and nobody loves me.
Mm.
But as soon as I became the woman leader of love for her and said, we got this, baby. I got your back.
Mm-hmm.
Let me scoop you up and love you and hug you, just like I do my grandbaby.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just like I do my children. When I started doing that, that's where the confidence started coming from. So does that help you with your clients a little bit?
It does. Let's keep talking about my clients. I got a disclosures agreement, so they can't sue me. So typically and it's funny because I wonder if it's, I already know it is actually. I identified this like 2 months ago when I was in an NLP session. 75% of my clients are female.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so let's not go down there. I want to stay on this vein, because for some of the males that I work with that are having this trouble that we're talking about, what I've learned, and we can land the plane on this question, but what I learned is it's often because father was harsh and abusive, and they developed this resentment because they were never tough enough for dad.
Right.
And so they cling to mom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like they feel like when they tap into masculine energy that they're being the very thing that they don't want to be like, which is be like dad.
Yes, exactly. And so what they have to understand is just the concept that when I'm being nurturing and kind and loving and scooping that little boy up inside of me, I'm not being like my dad, because my dad didn't do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So it's really discerning.
That's good. That's really good. That's really good. Yeah.
And recognizing that if they do have those moments where they get harsh and abusive, that they stop and go, oh, that's one of my subconscious triggers that's happening right now. And we don't do punishment anymore. We do love. And so it's learning to discern what's punishment and what is love. And
this is
really
this is really good. I'm like, man, it's really good. If you can, discerning between what's punishment and what's love.
Love. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Let me give you an example of this. So with my marriage to my late husband, because I had been abused, I did not know how to receive love, right? I didn't know how to let it in. And so I actually had a couple of infidelities in that marriage. And they were one night things, but I ended up telling him after working on myself and choosing forgiveness. And it actually ended up being one of the best things that ever happened to our marriage, because I healed and opened my heart up, right? I allowed myself to be loved. And even we were playing a tantric sex game one time, and he rolled the dice and it said, what are the 3 greatest gifts of this marriage? And he said, when we got married, when we had our kids, and when you had your infidelities, because it brought us here. Because instead of being in a state of blame, we saw it as a state of love and going deeper into what the pain was. But after it happened, okay, I'm standing at a cash register one day in a store, and there's this beautiful man. And I looked at him and I went, holy crap, he is really good looking. And I was like, we don't do punishment anymore. We do love. Just turn your head away. And that was really when it stuck with me about some things we think that are loving are actually punishment. That they're You know, we think we're seeking love outside of ourselves. So if we're working ourselves into the ground, we think, oh, this is the loving thing to do. This is the right thing to do. But in actuality, it's punishment because we're disconnecting. We're keeping ourselves at a low worthiness quotient.
Oh my gosh. This just keeps giving. Oh, I will. You connected that really well.
Thank
Wow.
you.
So here's where I can talk to you. I could talk to you all day. I could talk to you all day. Okay. But I know our audience, and they'll start logging off at the 45-minute mark. But here's what I want to do. And we've touched on so many of these, but leave us with, okay, my worthiness quotient is low, Terri. I want to raise it. What are some things I can begin to do? So you've mentioned some throughout the episode. You talked about the pause and allowing yourself to be guided in the morning to sort through your list. Great tip. Give us a few more, and this will be people's homework as implementation from this episode.
So the first thing is commit to unconditional loving yourself. Okay, we are not trained to do this in our society. And if we're even trying to do it a little bit, saying, well, I'm trying to love myself, we'll still have guilt around it. And if you're having guilt, it's going to keep you at a low worthiness quotient. So you want to say, when I love myself unconditionally, I'm putting God first. I'm saying yes to the way I was created. And by loving myself unconditionally, I am moving into alignment with God. And that is where you feel worthy. So that is your number one step, is choosing unconditional love. Then you start paying attention to, where am I performing? Am I suppressing my voice? Am I not asking for that raise because I'm trying to be good, or I don't feel I'll be heard? Am I not asking for what I need in our relationship with my partner? Am I not saying, can you please take out the trash? You know, am I suppressing myself and performing, thinking this is what love is? And if that's the case, you want to say, stop the performance. Stop the performance. And so what would the absolute opposite of that would be? You would go ask for that raise. You would ask for help. You would create conversation and communication in your relationship. If you're a parent and you feel worn out, you would say, okay, what do I need to do to fill my cup up without guilt? You know, that I can be that example for my children and my family. And then the next one is to nurture yourself into abundance. And what that means is asking that inner child, what is it that you need from me right now to feel loved? What is it that you need from me to feel that you matter and that you're valued and that you're worthy? And so whatever that message is, you take action. And this nurtures yourself into abundance, into alignment with God, and raises your worthiness quotient, so you're now open to receive.
Where, if I could unscrew this microphone right now and just drop it, I'll just drop it. This has been phenomenal. If you're just now tuning in because Facebook or YouTube or Stitch or whatever else this is streaming just like hopped you to this point, you need to go back and watch the interview. It was a master class in raising your worthiness quotient and how that can impact your overall well-being, happiness, joy, your financial abundance. And so it is the main thing. So make sure you go back and watch. And if you're like I am right now, and just like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, click share. Don't be selfish. She's agreed to give us her time, to gift us her time to share this because of how much she cares about this message and how much she likes Daryl, of course. And so you share it. You share it with someone who you care about, because that's what we do for people we love.
Can I ask also too to go take the quiz, the Worthiness Quotient quiz? It's going to give you a real good picture of every area of your life, and are you living with a high worthiness quotient or not? It's just terribritt.com/quiz. And it takes 2 or 3 minutes, but you are going to get a load of information, and you're going to get some steps to help start raising it.
Scared to take it. I thought I was good till we start talking. I'm like, man, I don't know. I was like, I'm worthy. I'm like, oh, maybe not. Maybe I'm working too hard. Wow, so phenomenal, guys. So make sure you head over. I put that on the screen one more time. terribritt.com/quiz. Take the quiz. Reach out to her. Show her love. Give her feedback. and make sure we elevate her and what she's doing, because I adore her. So that's it for today, guys. I'm so excited. I'm sorry I do not have my notes in front of me to see who our guest for next week is, but I know they'll be amazing as always. So what I want you to do is take action on those that last 3 to 5 minutes, or if you heard a little nugget earlier in the show, but to pick 1 or 2 things that you're going to implement this week, tomorrow, today, and start to raise your worthiness quotient and love yourself unconditionally. Because when you do, your life will change. And a good place to start is the quiz. I love that you have that. Go take the quiz. I'll make a commitment that I'll take it, even though I'm afraid. Because I'm like, I'm gonna lie on the test. No, I'm not gonna lie. But go ahead and take the quiz and make sure that you implement. Okay. Always remember that no matter how many mistakes you made, no matter what you've been through, that life has a way of awarding us second chances. And second chances, as you know, exist so that we can finish strong. So go out there and finish strong. Love you guys. Till next time. Peace.